Welcome everybody to Go Local Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. There is a lot of news in Rhode Island today. If you haven't seen it, we broke the story yesterday. Governor Raimondo has sold her house up on Morris Avenue as her and her family moves down to Washington, D.C. Obviously a big story that Go Local broke over the weekend related to Senator Sheldon Whitehouse's membership in Bailey's Beach Club has gone global and has been picked up by most every news organization in the country. You can take a look on the update on that. Black Lives Matter spoke out about their thoughts on the senator's membership in that club. Also, I want to thank David Bonenberger. He's going to be heading up Narragansett Electric as the new ownership group from Pittsburgh takes over the old national grid and kind of restores it back to the old brand, Narragansett Electric. They'll be taking over maybe by the end of the year if the regulatory process goes well. So I want to thank him for joining us as well. But I want to go to Charles Kelley. He's the Executive Director of Risley, Rhode Island Student Loan Authority. Charles, thanks so much for joining us.
Josh, thank you for having us on to help our students and families at this critical time.
It is a crazy time. It is a critical time. Colleges are in flux. We saw crazy things happen with some colleges closing even around New England over the past year. You see just a complete change of what the norm had been so long. Give us an overview of Risley's role in helping families.
Certainly. Risley's been around for about 40 years. I confess I've been there about 30. And our mission has sort of grown over the years. Before, we just provided education loans, but we saw a need for financial literacy, planning for college, help with financial aid forms. We established the College Planning Center in the Warwick Mall, which was virtual all of this past year. And but our main mission still is to provide some of the lowest fixed-rate education loans in the country, which helps lower the cost for higher education for our students and families.
Listen, congratulations on being hired at the age of 10 there at Rhode.
Thank you.
But Charles, you know, this is such a disruptive period of time. How are parents managing this? How are students managing this? What's the feedback you're getting on the entire application process as well as the financial aid process?
Well, needless to say, prior year was just a real challenge. Students starting school, withdrawing, trying to learn remotely. This year, most of the schools we deal with, particularly here in Rhode Island, are in very good shape, and they've opened up full-time for on-campus learning, combined with sort of a hybrid model with some distance learning, so that should there be another uptick in COVID, the schools and the students will be ready not to interrupt their education.
And Charles, how should parents be looking at this? Listen, we may be through the worst of this as the national average of folks being vaccinated continues to climb and cases continue to drop, but obviously there's complexities with this virus, and you know, there's one variant that is raising concerns that there could be an uptick later in the summer and the fall. How do parents sort of protect themselves from a financial obligation that may be somewhat in question?
Well, even before COVID, we spend a great deal of time counseling students and families, and it's at this point they probably made the decision of what school to go to, but to look at what is the best, academic fit, social fit, and just as importantly, the financial fit. What can the students and families afford? So we encourage people to borrow only what they need, and generally the disbursements to the schools go out in September, and then secondly in January, February, so that if there is a resurgence, and I hope it doesn't happen, of COVID, we can adjust down what they need to borrow for the second semester if they're going to be living from home and studying remotely, and they're not going to be charged any interest until funds are actually dispersed. And for years, we've been the only one other than the federal government to offer income-based repayment. So should there be hardships from unemployment, medical issues, or whatever, we can adjust the individual's monthly payment to fit their income and situation currently. So that has been a tremendous help during COVID.
We've talked a lot about the disruption, the uncertainty, and some of the negatives. Let's talk about the good news, low interest rates.
Yeah.
You tell me, you've been there for a while. Is this the best interest rates you guys have ever seen?
You're exactly right, Josh. This is the lowest fixed interest rates in our history. So this year for a typical 10-year repayment loan, and if someone pays via automatic ACH, it's 2.99%. So basically a 3% fixed rate loan for the life of the loan. And we do have deferred options, and we raise our money through the tax-exempt bond market. So we're able to borrow very inexpensively, and we pass those savings on to students and families.
And what's the highest someone might, and what's the lowest? What's the full range?
It's 3% if they go into repayment right away and repay over a 10-year period. Many families, though, feel that they can't afford to make payments while they're in school. So we have what's called a 15-year deferred, no payments until the student's out of school and for 6 months, and then it's repaid over 15. And that is at 4.74%. So as we borrow further out, essentially could be a 20-year bond we'd have to issue to fund that, we have to pay more, so that's why the rates are higher for them. So we encourage people to borrow and pay it back as quickly as possible, and we give them the lowest rate to encourage them to do so.
Listen, on the national debate politically, from Bernie Sanders to Elizabeth Warren, AOC, a number of different progressive leaders in Congress have talked about doing away with college loans, sort of giving everybody who now has a debt a whitewash. They wouldn't have to repay anything. How has that entered into the complexity of trying to educate parents, and has that been a problem? Is there confusion? Walk us through that a little bit.
Well, it's been confusing for really everybody, including us. People ask us what's going to happen in D.C., and we say, well, your guess is as good as ours. But the only concern we have about some of these talks about loan forgiveness is that many people say, well, I'll borrow, more money than maybe I really need to, because it's going to get forgiven anyways. And just no one knows if that's going to occur. So that should be the case whether you're borrowing directly from the federal government, and we encourage students to first borrow what they can under the federal loan program. And then if the families need more, that's where we come in. But we're fine with whatever the federal government wants to do. There are people out there that need some relief. We have a very low default rate of under 2%. So most of our borrowers are having not a problem meeting their obligations. And if they do, then we have income-based repayment.
Most of those who are entering in the fall are pretty set where they're going. The majority of them are figured out how they're going to pay for school. Give some advice to those. These are, rising seniors in high school, those families. What should they be thinking about for the fall? And how can your organization help them and kind of build the schedule out for them to get ready?
Well, sorry about that. The advice we always give is to first try to obtain any free financial aid that you can, grants, scholarships, file the FAFSA form, and then work with the schools that you're applying to and take a look at the financial aid package that they're giving. Our college plan
I've lost a little audio.
We have a.
Oh, you're back. Thank you.
All right. We have a scholarship site called rischolarships.org that helps people find local scholarships, which has been very helpful to people over the years. And, make sure that people are not over borrowing and attending a school that they can afford. And it's somewhat controversial, but for years we've been suggesting that maybe people look at the community college, particularly for some that it's now free, and then transfer to a four-year institution later on, and it can save them a great deal of expense by doing so. You know, everything has its pluses and minuses, but that's a great way if people are concerned about the cost of higher ed.
I got to tell you, that list of scholarships is incredibly valuable. When I went to the University of Rhode Island undergrad, and I worked my way through, I got a scholarship. It was for those children and grandchildren of people who worked at American Screw Company, which used to be down the street here in Providence where the Roger Williams Park Memorial is and where some apartment buildings are now. And my grandfather had worked in that factory back in the 30s, and $1,000. I think my URI tuition was $4,000 a year. So getting $1,000 from that scholarship fund made all the difference. It was less dishwashing that I had to do on the weekends and nights.
Well, no, that's great advice to everyone. And even though tuitions and room and board have increased in cost, many students we see put together multiple scholarships, and it makes a real difference, and that's that much less they have to borrow.
Well, I had a daughter at Georgetown and a son at Colby, so I went back and got those jobs dishwashing to be able to pay for both of those schools.
Those aren't expensive schools, but right. Congratulations, smart children.
Charles, last word goes to you. If you know, for families listening, should they take the summer off and enjoy, or if they've got a rising senior, what should they do right now towards the end of June?
Well, right now, towards the end of June, could be a good time to go on some campus tours, do some research on schools. In the past, we would suggest that students look at taking some review classes for the SAT, although many schools are now not requiring that. And also begin to get together materials so they can apply for financial aid, which the FAFSA form opens up on October 1. Currently. It used to be until January 1, but they can get a start on things. And there's also that all-important admissions essay. And the College Planning Center will not write that essay for the student, obviously, but we will help critique it or advise them on it.
Yeah, and that essay is becoming more and more important. As you said, more colleges are dropping the SAT requirements and the ACT requirements, and thus, listen, you've got to make the case with the remaining tools, your application, all of your experiences, but also that all-important essay. So yes. Listen, Charles, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. Enjoy. You are Skyping in from the West Coast on a trip.
Yeah,
and I want to thank you for...
I'm on vacation with my daughter who moved to California, so I hope this came through smoothly all the way from the left coast.
Enjoy the visit. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Listen, we'll have much more today on GoLocal. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, please get vaccinated. The states that get the highest percentage of their population vaccinated are going to do the best in the recovery. The jobs are going to come back the fastest. We're going to do the best at keeping our colleges and universities open and our schools open. So take a few minutes. It's easy. Even I could do it. Thanks, everybody.